and welcome to this new build video from helituning.com, and today we're building the 700 LE, T-Rex 700 LE from Align, and we're starting off as per the manual with the blade grip. I have the blade grip here. It comes with the bearing pre-installed here. This arm here is actually loose, so you need to take that out and Loctite it and screw it back in. Once you've done that, we can move on to installing the bearings into the blade grip here. So I'll just show you the order in which we need to put the bearings into there. Okay, the first thing to go into our blade grip is our thrust race, and it's made up of 3 parts. These are 2 of them, and then there is this third piece which is the race itself. The one with "in" written on it is the one that goes into the blade grip first. So if we're looking at the blade grip like this bearing side goes in first with the inside down, so that it's got the groove that the race is going to run in facing up towards us. So that piece goes in first. Secondly, the race goes in, and it doesn't go in this way up, it goes in that way up, like that. And the reason for that is that you basically grease this side of the race, you turn it up that way, and that cups the grease and stops it from coming out of the bearing. So that goes in next, and then the one without on it goes in last, this way up, so you can actually read out on it once it's inside the grip. Okay, and I've installed those, and as you can see, out is readable once we've installed the race. So the next thing to go in there is the spacer, which is this small shim spacer here, which I can't get a focus on. There we go. That goes in next. Just give that a tap. Okay, like so. And then on top of that we install the radial bearing. It's a large radial bearing, and if you want to get serious about this bearing, you can put some green Loctite around the outside of that before you put it in, so that it's Loctite in place once you've secured it into the grip. Okay, and that's our bearings installed into our grip, ready for installation onto our feathering shaft. Next we're going to be working with our head block, and what I've got here is a head block where one side I've actually completed the build step that we're going to be doing next, which is installing the dampers. This side we haven't actually done it yet, and I'm going to show you what we do here. So the first thing we want to install is this plastic sheath, effectively, which goes inside there, and it's an oval shape, and it has to fit into the oval inside the head block. So you can line it up, push it down so it locates like so. And then once we've got that in place, we can install our damper behind that. And if you look at the damper, it has a sort of a flat edge one side and then a chamfered edge the other side, and it's the flat edge that needs to go in against that inner plastic part, like so. And then that's our dampers installed into our head block. Okay, next we're putting our feathering shaft through the head block. First of all, we need to thread a blade grip onto the feathering shaft, which I've done, as you can see here. Then we need to put this shim onto the feathering shaft, so that goes between our blade grip and the damper in the head block. And then this end here inserts through our head block and locates like that, so it's nice and tight up against the damper. And it requires a fair bit of pressure to push this through the dampers, and you need to make sure that you don't push the dampers out while you're doing it. And to help you with that, you can use something like this, which is Tri-Flow synthetic grease, or a silicone based grease, to grease the dampers, and that allows you to push the shaft through much more easily and not just push them out of the head block as you do it. Okay, so there we have one blade grip installed onto the feathering shaft and butted up against the head block. We're now going to put the blade grip on the other side. Obviously we need to put our shim on here, which is going to go up against the damper. I've got the feathering shaft bolt and here the blade grip that's going to go on there. Now, one thing to do before you install the feathering shaft bolts on either side is get some tissue and put it down in this hole here, because there is a load of manufacture grease and oil down inside this feathering shaft, and you need to clean all of that out, otherwise the thread lock that you put on this screw is going to have no effect whatsoever. So you really must clean out the interior of the feathering shaft first. And then basically we insert our second blade grip, and then we can put the feathering spindle bolt with a nice push amount of Loctite on it into there, screw it up tight, put an Allen key in each side, just give it a little bit just to make sure that it is tight, but don't go crazy, it doesn't need a gorilla tightness. And then that's your first part of your head block and blade grips built. Okay, next we're assembling our flybar carrier and upper mixers. This is actually complete already, and there's not a lot to do here. In a separate packet there are the balls which you need to screw into the arms here. As you can see, I've already done that. Plenty of Loctite on these. This actually comes slightly assembled onto the head block already, so you need to undo these little screws here in order to get it off of there, so that we can basically work on this off of the head block. These screws here are also loose, and you need to take those out, put some thread lock on them and put them back in again, and that will get you to this stage. And at this point we can now install that back onto our main head block. Okay, here we have our head block, and our flybar carrier and upper mixer is going to screw into this upper hole here. When you put it on, make sure that you put it on with the align writing orientated correctly so you can actually read it once it's installed. So this will go onto our head block like that, like so, and then we put the screws I showed earlier, which I've just got to the side here, these ones go through the hole there with thread lock and tighten up. Okay, and then we have it installed, and you can see that this rocks lovely and free, as do the upper mixers, and we're now in a position to install the flybar cage around this. Okay, so here we have our flybar cage, and I've got this partially assembled already. So basically there are some little screws like this which go into the ends of this here. Now this is actually keyed, it can only go on one way, and it needs to go with this piece here outwards. There are little recesses in this side that these parts here go into, and then this side you've got some kind of silver, this side it's all black, this side it's silver, and our screws sit down in those recessed holes, and we basically screw that into there with some Loctite, and that makes our cage. We also need to put our ball links and rods onto here as well before we install this part, because obviously you can't get them on once you've assembled this piece. On the other side of these we've got the grub screws for holding our flybar in place as well, and at this stage these are just put in there without Loctite until we insert our flybar, and then we'll put Loctite on those and tighten them up. Okay, so there we have our cage built. This now needs to go onto our rotor head, which I have here. Basically the way this goes is that the grub screws go towards the top of the rotor head, and the reason you want to do that is that if these ever do come loose at all, you don't really want them dropping out. But I mean, if you're a 3D pilot, the chances are it will drop out whether you've got it the right way up or not, because you could be inverted. But for the majority of flyers who don't fly inverted, by putting these towards the top it makes them easily accessible, and also if one of them does come loose you're not going to lose it from it falling out of the machine. So basically our rotor head goes down through, and then it's a little bit of a fiddle actually, because it's quite a tight fit to slide that into place, and I'll actually do that off camera because it's going to be very hard for me to get that right on camera. Okay, and there we have our cage in place and our flybar inserted through. At this point what I normally do is make sure that I've got the same amount of flybar sticking out of each side of the cage, so I balance up the flybar at this point and make sure that the distance from the edge of the cage here to the end is the same on both sides, so that I know that it's effectively an in-balance rotor head for when I screw the flybar paddles on, and that I don't have more rod one side than the other. Just something to quickly show you as well is the flybar itself has a flat on it, which when you pull the flybar in you can then see through the hole here, and that's your kind of first indication as to where the rod needs to be approximately, and then it's just a little bit of fiddling by a few millimetres to get it absolutely perfect in terms of the same amount of rod each side of the flybar cage. First of all, the swash plate. This comes in the kit with all of these balls loose, so you actually need to just back these off, take them out, put some Loctite on them and then put them back in again, which I've already done, as you can see here, and then that's the swash plate completed. With the washout base, again I've already gone ahead and done this, but basically when you get this, the plastic arms here, the screws on those are already Loctited, so you don't need to do anything with those. You do need to install these balls here, again with Loctite onto these arms. These screws onto the washout base are also loose. Again, take them out, Loctite them, screw them in, and then that's the piece is done and ready for installation. Okay, so before installing these two items on, you want to connect the washout to the swash plate, and as you can see that's done by connecting the two down links to opposing balls on the inner swash ring. Next we're going to be working with our main shaft. The main shaft has this double hole one end and then a single hole the other. It's the end with the double holes on it that inserts up into our head block, and the lower end here, this is where the main gear goes and the bolt goes through the main gear to hold our shaft onto the main gear to give us our drive up to our rotor head. Notice there's like a shim in the middle here. This is replacing the mast locking collar on previous Align machines, and there are shims in the kit as well that you can use for this. If you've got any play when you install this into the machine, you can shim the mast here in order to take that play out. Okay, here we have our shaft with the swash plate and washout base installed onto it. You must put these on first because you can't actually insert the swash plate up from underneath because it will hit the shim and can't go any further than the shim. So put these onto the mast first, and then this inserts up into our rotor head and can be bolted in place. Okay, here we have our rotor head, and I've already put the Jesus bolt through here with the nylock nut on the other side, and then there's a bolt goes in this side where this hole is here, and one the other side. It's this small bolt here, and Loctite onto that, and then just screw it into there, same both sides, and then that's our head bolted onto our shaft. Okay, next we're installing our head button, and for the benefit how to do that. Okay, and there we have the head button installed. Next we've got to put linkages onto our various arms on here to allow the control system to work, and we've also got to screw the paddles onto the flybar, so that's next. Okay, so here we have our linkages. These are for the upper mixer to blade grip, and these go from the swash plate up to our upper mixers. Okay, so there we have all of our linkages installed onto our rotor head. Just try and rotate this a little bit so you can get some perspective. So here's our blade grip link, and then the one that's going from the swash plate to the upper mixer. I'll show you that there. And those are effectively the two we just installed. Also with the ball links, make sure that you've got the little A that's written on the ball link towards the outside, and then the opposite side of that goes onto the link, so the ball of the ball link inserts into the side opposite to the A on the ball link itself. Okay, so that's the linkages installed. I've followed the lengths in the manual for those. They may or may not be correct when we come to do the actual setup of the rotor head, but as a baseline I've followed the ones in the manual. The last thing for us to do in building up our rotor head is to put the paddles onto the end here. Just got to screw those on and then get them equidistant from the edge of our flybar cage here, just the same as we did with the flybar itself. Okay, so there we have our paddle installed. The gap here is as per the manual, which is 207mm, and you want to set that the same for both sides. There is a little grub screw which screws in the front here to hold the fly bar in position, and you just need to tighten that down onto the fly bar to lock the paddle in place. Okay, and that's our rotor head completed. Cool beans.